Hey guys, it's Spider Pig here, and I have a problem. Whenever I'm in the L-39 or some of the other aircraft, the joystick seems to be blocking my view from getting to the panel in front of it. And when I'm flying with the Oculus Rift, this seems to be a problem. I can click on everything else I need with the Oculus Rift, but this panel in front of me seems to be a problem. The way I have to get around it is I have to move the joystick to the extremes like I'm showing you in this video here in order to access the panel. So, since people have been asking me how I build some of my panels for the cockpit, I decided this would be a great kind of way to segue into that and build a panel. So, I'm going to base the panel off the start module that I have for the A10C right now. This is a picture of it. The panel I'm going to build is going to be a lot shorter and a lot smaller. I'm thinking it's going to be a paper size, so around 11 inches by 8 inches. Now, what I'm going to model this panel on is the L39 panel, and what I'm using is a program called OmniGraffle. And the first thing I did was kind of put everything the way I want it to look, and you can see that here. And the thing I like about OmniGraffle is it uses layers, so I can kind of show different layers and different things. So when I design buttons, I know that the buttons that I mostly use are 1/2 inch wide in diameter, sorry. And what that means is I put a 1/2 inch circle in there, and I also put a box underneath it to represent the actual component of the switch, so I can kind of see how everything is going to work. For this build, I'm also going to use some arcade buttons because the L39 has different colored buttons for different colored flares, so I think it would be kind of a cool way to do that as well. And I'm just going to add a joystick on the left side. In the future, I want to be able to use this panel for things like combined arms, so the joystick initially I'll just probably use for gears or things like that. And on the right side, I want to add basically like a radio communication kind of thing. So because I can't really see my keyboard with the Oculus Rift, I want to be able to use the F buttons without having to, take off the Oculus Rift. So I figured a nice little radio communication kind of thing that looks like a telephone dial pad on the right side. So let's talk about the way it's kind of look, and you'll see that the text on the top will be changed in the future, for different aircraft. This is just for right now. It's an L39, and this is the way it looks. Here's just kind of the electronic components. And I probably won't go too much into this on this video, but when I do get all the components and start actually putting it together, I'll get a little more detail how everything works. Essentially, you need one ground to connect to all the switches, and then each of the switch will connect to the USB controller. Speaking of USB controllers, there's two that I've used in the past and I would recommend. The first one is called the GP-Wiz 40, and that's made by Groovy Game Gear. And the thing I like about this one is it's designed for arcade systems. So if you think of an arcade system, it's designed for joysticks and it's designed for buttons and things like that. You can do up to 32 buttons with it, along with 2 joysticks. I think you can also do rotaries as well. The only problem with the GP-Wiz 40 is that you can only have 4 of them because they have to be individually numbered so you don't have conflicts, so the computer doesn't see 2 of the same modules. So the other USB controller I like to use is called BBI32. And I've used these in the past and it's great. And not only that, but you can actually change the firmware name of the USB controller. So I think you can have up to 10 of them or maybe even more. So for this build, I'm going to use this one. This one is a purely kind of an input thing. They do have one that you can make joysticks with, but for this one, it's purely 32 inputs, and it's exactly what I need for this build. So let's talk about some of the components I'm going to be using besides the USB controller. I do need a 3-way switch, so I went to eBay and I found this one, which seems to be working great. I tend to use the heavy duty switches just because I find that with the cheaper ones, about after a year and a half of me using them in the cockpit, I kind of have to replace them, so I just buy heavy duty from the beginning. I do need a lot of on-off switches, so I went ahead and went to eBay, and I looked at eBay, and I got it. These ones right here. You can find these at pretty good prices on eBay. Then I went to Groovy Game Gear, and I ordered the joystick that I need and the 4 colored buttons. The buttons are nice because they come with a switch that you need to kind of make them work. You can pay extra if you want to get fancier switches, but for this project, we're not going to need anything too fancy. And for the radio part, I went to Amazon and I ordered a whole bunch of tactile buttons, and they kind of they're smaller and they feel different, and you kind of need a board to make them work. So I also ordered the board, and I'll talk more about that probably in the next video when all the components come in. So what I noticed is, after ordering all these parts and kind of printing out the design, is that I have 35 inputs on this panel, but I can only do 32 with the USB controller I just ordered. So sometimes you got to modify. Sometimes you got to say, okay, what do I really need, or what can I get rid of? So in my original design, I had the rotary for the volume, which I'm going to get rid of because I can just, I don't need that right now. I'm going to get rid of the emergency jettison because I can map a joystick button to that as well. And I'm going to get rid of the fire extinguisher for now. So that'll bring me down to 32 inputs, and I should be able to get started. So as I said, I've already ordered all the parts, and once they come in, as I start to build, I will take videos and show you. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next week.